Right, I'm hoping now that renowned TV commentator Ian Darke is ready to join me. Ian, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. I hope you can hear me because I'm in the wilds of West Wales and the phone signal isn't the greatest from here. So we're just fingers crossed here.
No, I can hear you. It's a real honour to have you on. Thank my mum and dad are here as well, so they say hello to you as well. So a real pleasure.
Hi to Jenny and John.
They're
I can
waving
hear them in the background.
so,
yeah, they want to do their own show by the sound of it.
Yeah, I think they should be the next Richard and Judy, I think. So, yeah, thank you so much for coming on. I'm just really interested to talk about your career, which spans many, many highlights. So how did you first get into it? Was it the Portsmouth News where you started? Am I right in saying that? Or where was your sort of grounding as a sports journalist?
Yeah, I was on the Portsmouth Evening News and I started off wanting to be a news journalist. Somebody wandered into the office and said, does anyone fancy doing a football commentary at Fratton Park Portsmouth game? Because we haven't got anybody to commentate for hospital radio. So I put my hand up like a bit of an idiot to do this. I ended up doing it more or less for the whole season. We found out at the end of the season that nobody had heard a word of it because of a technical fault. But I guess it was good training. And it was a few years after that I moved into BBC local radio, more conventional broadcasting, and eventually got a chance to commentate at the famous BBC Radio 2, as it then was, now 5 Live Academy, the radio sports room in London, where we were all in awe of some very big names.
Yeah. Oh no, that's incredible. So when you started on local radio, was that Portsmouth, or what were you covering at that point?
No, I was in Leicester, Radio
okay.
Leicester, which was the first BBC local radio station back in the 1970s. We're talking here, so I know that ages me, but quite a long time.
No, it's very exciting. And when you first started out, was it football? Because I know you went on to boxing and were incredibly successful covering that and covered many big fights. So was it football that you went with first, to boxing, or how did your career transpire sort of sports-wise?
Well, we had to be really all-rounders, to be honest with you. At Leicester, I did news and sport, and I had to wind up editing tapes. We often cut ourselves with razor blades, cutting tapes against deadline to get things on the air. So you really had to be an all-rounder. I think anyone who's worked in local radio would know that. So I did news. I did more and more sport. I used to cover some Leicester City games and interview Leicester City players of the time as well. But and I was full-time sport when I moved into London and to work in the BBC Radio sports room. And at the time, the likes of Desmond Lynam and Jim Rosenthal and Gerald Williams and Brian Butler and Peter Jones were the big stars of the time. So I was sitting opposite them broadcasting in my early days there, thinking, what on earth am I doing here? What do these guys think of a rookie up from the sticks like me?
And then when did you end up on doing the TV commentaries?
Yeah, well, I did boxing on the radio because Desmond Lynam was about to become a huge star on BBC television, as he was in his heyday. He was the pinner, he was the guy. So he didn't have time to do the radio boxing anymore. I didn't know that much about boxing. I was interested in it, but I'd never thought of really reporting it. But suddenly when I was in the office, the editor said to me, look, Des can't do this big fight in Las Vegas at the weekend. Would you go there and do reports on Muhammad Ali against Larry Holmes? So, I mean, I started covering a Muhammad Ali fight. So everything was downhill from there, really. Yeah, but I ended up covering the boxing on radio and television, to cut a long story short. And then, all the time I was doing football as well, from Italia 90 onwards, really.
Yeah, and with the boxing, what are the main fights that stick out for you? Obviously, that Muhammad Ali one in particular would have been incredible as your first one, but there were many more after that, weren't you? You almost became the voice of boxing for many years, really.
I did a lot of fights, and too many really to count up. Just looking back, it was a privilege, really. I probably didn't appreciate it going to Las Vegas, sitting there watching the likes of Mike Tyson and Lennox Lewis. That Ali fight that I mentioned was the saddest thing I've ever seen in sport, because he just got beaten up for 10 rounds by Larry Holmes. But I think the best fight I ever saw and ever covered was the 1985 Classic between Marvelous Marvin Hagler and Thomas Hearns. There are only 3 rounds of it, but any of your younger listeners here, or anyone listening to this, go to YouTube, find that and watch it. And I think if you're any kind of boxing fan, you'll be watching it with your mouth wide open. It was just spellbinding and dramatic.
Yeah, no, it sounds incredible. And football-wise, when did you start commentating on the top leagues?
I did really I started working in television doing boxing and athletics as well, believe it or not, just for a little while. And they found out my football knowledge was very good. So I got offered the chance to do the World Cup in Italy, Italia 90. And after that, there was a merger with what became Sky Sports, and I ended up being the Sky Sports Monday Night Football commentator in the early years, and well, for a long time, really. Martin Tyler did the Sunday games. I did Monday game. Crazy times where Sky was trying to establish itself and use like dancing girls on the pitch at half time, and the presenters wearing pastel colored weird jackets, anything to notice. But everybody seemed to like the coverage, and I became really established doing quite a lot of the big games around that era in the early 90s, and I've done it ever since.
Yeah. How's it changed? How's your job changed during that time? What are the differences now to when you first started?
Well, I think the whole thing's become more corporate. Football's become more corporate. The players are really ring fenced now. They're not often available to you journalists. They used to go and have, a couple of drinks with the players after games and pick up their stories. That doesn't happen anymore. It's become harder to cover football as well. Fight shoots, VA, impenetrable handball rule, all the added time. Obviously, there are way more players now from around the world playing. So obviously, pronunciation's a bit of an issue as well. We have to work at that, and I'd like to see really our Premier League become much more fan friendly than it is, more like the Bundesliga. I think the fans have somewhere been forgotten in all of the changes over the last 30 years since the Premier League gold mine started.
Yeah. But you must still enjoy it to still be doing it. Do you still get the same buzz as you did when you started?
Oh, yeah, because I think once you stop having that, you might as well stop broadcasting, really. If you don't have a little, if the game doesn't excite you and you don't feel the adrenaline anymore. I still do feel that before I go on air. A lot of people say, well, do you feel nervous going on? No, I don't feel nervous, but it's not a question of finding words. It's trying to find the right words, and basically also knowing when to shut up, because we all talk too much. And I think my advice for any young commentator starting out would be, don't over rely on all the research you've done for the game, because I think a lot of guys go on air and they just want to show the audience how much they know about this game. Well, the fact is, most people sitting at home, they don't want to know all those facts. They don't want to know every statistic surrounding the game. They just want to watch the game and enjoy it. And for you to be a reasonably good guest in their living room with a bit of warmth and maybe a little bit of humor thrown in. So that's the way I've tried to work. I don't often succeed in doing it, but that's what I try to do.
Oh, no, you definitely do. And has social media changed your job? Has it made it more difficult or easier, or how has that affected things? Because obviously that's become such a big part of everyday life in more recent times.
Yeah, it has. It's really changed. And I feel sorry, because this is something that the likes of John Watson and Barry Davis in the old days never had to put up with, because every game you do now, if you want to go on Twitter, and I to go on Twitter because there's so much tribal, toxic hatred outpourings because everybody thinks you're biased against their team, and there are so many keyboard warriors. So my trick really is I don't look at it. I don't look at social media, especially when I've just done it.
Yeah.
You could take that to heart. I take good and bad with the pinch of salt with that kind of thing. But hey, look, social media is useful. You pick up a lot of stories and a lot of gossip about the clubs, and it's very handy. You know, often for those of us who want the team as early as we can get it, because these days the likes of Pep Guardiola and Jose Mourinho are not in the old days. We used to get the team ahead of time from the managers. They don't do that anymore. So any little kind of gossip we've got about possible injuries, possible changes of formation for a team, social media can be handy with that in just pointing you in the right direction. So I wouldn't rubbish it completely, but you know, some of the people who go on there really need to take a pretty good look at themselves.
Yeah, and just finally, it's been a good start to the season for Portsmouth. I know they're close to your heart, so Mum's pleased as well. So, what have you made of their start to the season? Can they keep it going?
Well, fingers crossed. I mean, I think there's been a lot of falls in recent years. The team have been to the table around this time and not followed it on to get promotion. But I think the recruitment's been better. This team look as if they've got something about them this year. They're top and they're unbeaten so far in the league. So I'm hopeful. Why does he support Portsmouth? You know, they all nearly went bust. You know, they're down in the third tier. Well, my dad took me when I was 5 years old, so I've been hooked ever since. It's been ruined many a weekend, you know that, Chris.
Yeah, well, I support Southend, so
it's not ruining him at the moment.
Yeah, fingers crossed.
Well, yeah. So yeah, man, look at everything, and I'm sorry for that, because you know that's sad to see everything that's happened and what all the fans have had to go through with Southend. So you know, I hope there's better times ahead for them.
Brilliant. That's fantastic. So good to have you on. Thank you so much indeed. And enjoy the rest of your trip. And thank you so much for coming on. Hope to see you soon.
Thank you very much, Chris, because and to your parents as well. It's always been good knowing you, and every success for the future.
Thank you very much. Take care. See you later. Fantastic. So good to have broadcasting legend Ian Darke, who we do know, he's a family friend. So in case you just think that I'm randomly saying that my mum and dad here, my mum is actually his daughter's godmother. There we go.